Hello everyone. In this session we will discuss about economic evaluation. Um, Whenever we are talking about economic evaluation, the first word says us that again we are discussing something about economics, and something related to economic variables or economic perspectives. Now, economic evaluation being one of the core and most important area studied under health economics, or uh, this is a subject or a stream under health economics which tries to estimate the economic impacts of a particular process, healthcare process. And why it is important or unique is, before going to that, why it is unique or important, we know it is important because we have to estimate the benefit against the costs of a particular process. As during our lectures we have learned that it has been really difficult to quantify health as a particular commodity or just one service, just one unit. Quantifying under one unit has really been difficult because of its heterogeneous characteristics, as well as and its volatile nature in terms of several components under health services, or be it from the demand side or from the supply side. So what we generally look at when we kind of demand for healthcare, or we try to purchase healthcare as a product or as a service. So the first thing is, of course, we look at when we purchase healthcare, the first thing we look at, of course, as any rational buyer, the price of the product, right? Price of the services, price of the medicine, price of a diagnostic service. So the first thing is price. The second thing is, of course, the quality, because health is an area where quality is very important. The margin of error is very low, and we all look at the maximum effectiveness. Therefore, and the effectiveness in terms of how my health is being better off, being improved. So that is and if it is really making sense, if it is increasing my health, it is increasing my satisfaction to that extent which I want, which should be, then quality is ensured. So it's not only the price, people also look at the quality whenever it comes about healthcare. And then the third one is, as I said, that effectiveness. Even if the better quality may not be the most effective for me, because effectiveness has been always a relative measure. You pay more, maybe the particular treatment process is more effective, but paying more is always not a possibility, so because considering affordability, considering accessibility, effectiveness, whenever we talk about effectiveness, we have to talk about what kind of inputs the resources I am pouring in, and based on that, what is the effectiveness, and whether the kind of input I am giving, that is giving me the right outcome or desired outcome. So the effectiveness cannot be just in terms of the health I have gained, and again measuring health, what I have gained, has remained a challenge. And this effectiveness, related to price, and finally related to likely outcome, will be measured under cost effectiveness analysis, or economic evaluation. Techniques. Yeah. However, getting these things right, both price, quality, effectiveness, likely outcome, getting these things right are very challenging. That's primarily because the market imperfection in healthcare. Why this market imperfection in healthcare? We have learned that there is inefficient output, there is high level of externality, there is lack of information among the buyers, among the suppliers, moral hazard when somebody purchases a life insurance. From the life insurance perspective, there is adverse selection, the externalities which is untapped, the market power. So all these, and then the demand and supply, consumer and supplier nexus. So there are several things which actually play a major role, pushing that towards market imperfection. And when there is a market imperfection, so the getting the price right, or getting an idea about the right price, getting the idea about the right quality or its effectiveness or the likely outcome, all have been under question as far as the when a person ventures in healthcare market, or as a consumer asks for the healthcare as a product or services. So these all have not really made their the decisions very efficient. But the challenge remains challenge. Still we try to estimate the economic impact of a particular process. It can be a treatment process, it can be a production process, it can be an operational process. So and because everything has an outcome, right, and then the challenge is that how we measure this outcome. Therefore whenever we are thinking about this, based on inputs, we are evaluating the processes, looking at the outcomes. So if I place it like this, I have a list of inputs. Now it goes past the processes, and finally it has output or outcomes, right? And these inputs are the doctors, staffs, so the training, equipments, medicines, and so on and so forth, diagnostic systems. The processes can be the treatment processes, several treatment processes, different drugs, and here we are talking about the alternatives or the choices available, alternatives or choices. And these outcomes are primarily my health outcomes in terms of, maybe we have outcomes like disability adjusted life here, length of stay or average length of hospital stays. So all these can be my, or my eventually my satisfaction out of these, the or the opportunity cost gained, that means the benefits, several ways. Yeah, so I can measure these outcomes of my or the days to take up the days of a treatment process. Lesser the number of days of a treatment process, the better my outcome is. So, but again you see that getting these outcomes in terms of health is not an easy task, as far as this quantification is concerned, right? So basically then what does this economic evaluation do? The economic evaluation first sets its objective, before objective, maybe it's the premise is primarily health research, healthcare research. The objective can be two ways, allocative or objective is to gain efficiency primarily, but to maximize health gain with available resources. So which talks about efficiency, right? And then efficiency, as we learned, can be either allocative efficiency, which says that benefit is maximized based on the best allocation, benefit is maximized based on the best allocation, so that the opportunity cost lost is reduced, and that is how I estimate the benefit. My opportunity lost, my opportunity foregone, that is reduced. That means I am not losing much. That should be the priority. And the technical efficiency, where you again maximize your benefit based on the given resources, or minimize the cost, get an optimum minimum minimized cost, to achieve a particular amount of production. Finally, the methods, in a nutshell, the compare costs and consequences. That's the benefits, right, of an intervention, or of several of alternative interventions. Yes. So, and while we are comparing between the cost and consequences, we have to balance, between which we balance. One is cost and consequences, or I will say benefits. Yes. And the other one is inputs and outputs, because what is falling in between is process, right? In both the ways, the process is what we are trying to evaluate. Yeah. And understanding the cost and the benefit, as well as the input and the output. Now, the final thing is economic evaluation. After we compare, then that can be considered as economic evaluation, which is criteria, setting a criteria of making choices, right? By definition, this economic evaluation can be known as the comparative analysis of alternative courses of action in terms of both their costs and their consequences. This definition is given by Drummond et al. In the year of 1997. Yes. So, to do this economic evaluation, we will require two things. One, a comparison between two or more alternatives. Two, examination of both costs and consequences or benefits, right. So, we basically do these two things. In terms of health, intervention basically measures, involves two measures. In terms of health, it has two measures. One, health effects from an intervention, from several interventions, targeting the same thing, of course. Number two, value or efficiency of the effects. So, which basically means that in terms of intervention, I have a health effect, right? That's what the primary target is. So, now my health effect, is it, or are they really valuable? Are they really making sense to me, right? I went to a doctor so that I don't, I have a movement problem in my legs. So I went to a doctor, he did something, and then I used to feel a pain on my knees. Now probably the pain is gone, but I still am not comfortable, while walking. My problem persists, but only the thing, the knee pain is gone. So the value eventually, because my major problem was not probably the knee pain, my major problem was difficulty in movement, and the difficulty in movement that sustains, what is gone is the secondary problem. So the value which I gained eventually by that intervention is not making me that sense. So we have to, we know the health effects, we know there is some positive effect, but in terms of that health effects also, we need to bring a comparison, that how efficient are those effects. So therefore, while we are doing an economic evaluation, say for, it can be a hospitalization process, it can be an awareness generation program under public health operations, it can be an immunization program, it can be say a treatment based or clinical program, pharmaceutical program. So, and which requires different types of, based on different outcomes, they will require different types of interventions, like, right, economic evaluation methods or techniques. So there are primarily 4 techniques or 5 techniques of economic evaluation. I will say that there are basically 4 economic evaluation techniques. Though the first one is very rudimentary in nature, very simplistic in nature, let us start with that itself, and not considering that, we have 4. Let us see. So how we try to understand that which particular economic evaluation technique we will use. So the first question we ask while deciding an appropriate economic evaluation technique is, so I will write it, types of economic evaluation. So first question we ask, is there a good evidence? Let me just use some other color. On effectiveness of interventions being compared. Yeah. So if I don't have any evidence, I can't do anything, right? If I don't have much evidence, because I'm not sure that what is the basically what are the effects, and if we are not very sure, we cannot really compare based on the effects, right? So, and still, if I am asked to make a decision or make a judgment that which one I will take, as it is an economic evaluation, as we need to bring an an optimization, we need to achieve an optimization, minimizing cost or maximizing benefit, and we are unsure about the benefit component, we go for this minimizing cost, right? So it's simply, then in that case we do a costing study. Simply, if no, then we do a costing study. Yes, but if yes, then the next question we ask is effectiveness of interventions are equal or not? Effectiveness of interventions are equal or not, right? And I raise a question on this. If they are equal, then the second question comes, okay, that whether they are equal or not, then I will choose maybe a different color here. And if it is yes, then we do cost minimization analysis. That means now I have from here to here the differences, I have idea about my interventions or my outcomes, right? Outcomes of the interventions. Now I have got the good evidence. Yes. So once I have the good evidence, then I can start comparing between the cost between the interventions and I mean both the costs as well as its impact on the effectiveness. And then once we started doing that, the first question we asked that whether the effectiveness is similar or not, are equal or not, and if they are equal, that both these whatever process we do, both the effectiveness is same. Then if they are same, we straight away ask for both of them, my result is same, my outcome is same, and if my outcome is same, I will of course choose which is the cheaper one, right? So there my objective is straight away minimize the cost. So it is known as the cost minimization analysis, right? Once we this we don't have, we have idea about the effectiveness, but they are not similar. So we come to this no now, right? So over here now I ask the question that can all outcomes, now my interventions are not similar, yes I know that. Then the next question, okay fine, they are not similar. Now can these interventions or can this effectiveness or the outcome can be valued in monetary terms, can the outcomes be valued in monetary terms, right? It again has a yes and no. Yes, so if it is yes, then we do cost benefit analysis. If the outcome can be measured in monetary terms. But if no, then we ask a further question. I will keep it like this. If it is no, then we ask another question. Then the question is, can outcomes be measured as quality adjusted life years? Yeah. In terms of quality adjusted life years, QALY or DALY, or disease adjusted life years, we will learn about them, yeah, what is QALY and what is DALY when we learn about this particular technique, yeah, more closely. So, and we see that again the response is yes and no. If they are no, that they cannot be measured in terms of quality adjusted life years, then we will do cost effectiveness analysis, and if it is yes, then we do cost utility analysis. Let us see. So this is my cost effectiveness analysis, and this is my cost utility analysis. Again, utility or satisfaction is not easy to measure or quantify. That is why we measure in terms of QALY or DALY. That is, this QALY or DALY says primarily that the number of years a person either is losing because of a particular disease, or the quality of QALY is primarily, even if we talk about DALY, but QALY is the sole measure which gives an estimate about the satisfaction. Yeah, but we still can keep DALY because it's very difficult to estimate QALY because it's very relative, it's very abstract in nature, as the utility is, the satisfaction is, it's very abstract in nature. So so we often do supplement QALY with DALY. Yes, we will talk about this more in after some times, but So we'll slowly start understanding that these economic evaluation techniques. So we know that the costing studies, basically we are not able to compare between effectiveness or two effectiveness, so we can't really do much here. So we want to be talking over here, so we are restricting in four, which are basically the economic evaluation, because we evaluate the effectiveness, and we have idea about those effectiveness from this cost minimization, cost benefit, cost effectiveness, and cost utility. So we have four here. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4. While I am describing, I will not follow this order. First I will talk about cost minimization, then we will go to cost effectiveness analysis. So now let us learn what is cost minimization analysis. As I said, the objective is minimize cost here more than maximize output, because the effectiveness is similar, and we learned here that this is yes, that is we have a good evidence of effectiveness, and then we do cost minimization analysis when we have this question is as well. That means our effectiveness of interventions are equal. So which primarily says that over here my objective is not output maximization, my objective is basically cost minimization, and that is why it is known as cost minimizing analysis. Yes, so the first thing is that we are comparing between two or more alternatives, always similar, always same, between two or more alternatives, uniform for all these techniques. Next is outcomes are assumed to be same, they may differ, but we are assuming that economics is assumption. Yeah, so outcomes are assumed to be same. Third is generally not recommended because it ignores the primary criteria of heterogeneous nature of healthcare. Healthcare market. Yeah. So this is about cost minimization analysis, and we really don't recommend cost minimization analysis if and only if it's like say I am taking paracetamols, right, and then I take crocin, I take Calpol, or I take Dolo 650 if they are all together same. Dolo 650 maybe not, but yeah, these things, or Combiflam maybe. So if the compositions are more or less similar, or I apply move, I apply Volinigel, I apply some other whatever these things are. So and if my fever in the first example comes down in 3 days, over here my muscle spasm gets relaxed in 3 days. So the effectiveness is similar, and then it's straight away I just ask that which costs how much, and eventually you will find that the prices are very, very close to each other. They don't really differ by a large margin. No, they are very, very, if one pain balm is 70, the other one is 72 maximum, yeah, or 75, that's all. So there is not much of price advantage either. That's primarily because they also accept the effectiveness are similar, so or close to similar, even though they can say that we have this, we have that, and we are advanced, and we so eventually it is nothing like that, and that probably can be the best example of cost minimization analysis which we practice in our day-to-day life. Whenever we go to a medicine shop, and then maybe if I don't have close idea about, or I don't have a predetermined preference about a particular drug or a particular process, then probably I generally do a cost minimization analysis. Or if I just need to get a polio drop to my child and I missed those dates, if I go to I need to go to a doctor, it's just giving a polio drop which is 100 rupees if I go to A hospital, 100 rupees I go to B, or 100 rupees if I go to C, or maybe they don't take anything. But at the same time, even if they are giving it free of cost, the doctor has to be paid, right? And in some top tertiary hospital, if I go, they may charge 700 rupees. That's the rate in Bangalore, 700-800 rupees. If I go to a general small time nursing home, it's 300 rupees. I go to a small clinic, it can be even less. So it really, and then you decide that okay, I don't really want to go to those tertiary care hospitals, because why should I pay just for for this polio drop which for my mistake I missed those days. So I don't want to really pay that much. Anyways, so the next comes cost effectiveness analysis. So what we do here, we first have an idea about the outcome. Next, the outcomes are not similar to each other, but at the same time the outcomes are close and common. The outcomes are not same, the effectiveness are not same, the effectiveness varies, but the outcome is measured under the same unit. Yeah. So, and then these outcomes can be the level of hemoglobin, or kind of glucose level, my blood pressure. These are the basic parameters, right, of our health, and then my iron content, calcium, and all these things, if I take some treatment to improve all these conditions. So, and these are the easy measures, right, and you can eventually measure it based on the disease adjusted life years, that how many years you have basically lost or lived with morbidities or with disease. So these are, and then the lesser is that the more is the effectiveness. So we can estimate it in some quantifiable techniques, and which are uniform across all these all these alternative techniques. Therefore, when we do this cost effectiveness analysis, both of course cost is a numeric figure, but the effectiveness must have to be a numeric figure. They have to be quantifiable, and the cost effectiveness analysis, so quantifiable effectiveness in fact, the the measures can also be quantifiable, such as that if not in terms of cost, that the hours of exercises, the kind of food intake, or the total calorie intake, right. So and then you can again monetarily estimate the cost as well. So, and then the I forgot to tell you, in basically in cost effect, I mean in economic evaluation, all these techniques can be estimated in terms of cost. While we measure the cost, it should include both the direct cost as well as indirect cost. And when we include the direct cost and the indirect cost, when we learned about our cost mechanism, it should include all the parameters, and it of course have comes with a challenge, but still to understand the best impact of a cost effectiveness analysis or a cost benefit analysis, it's important that we have a clear idea about the cost. Eventually, for certain techniques, say for a cost benefit analysis, we may ask for a social cost or the social benefit. Yeah, so because that in our previous lectures we learned that that external benefit and external cost is very important, and if we don't really adjust for that, and if we don't really get an idea about that, then we are moving of course towards this market imperfection and an inefficient output. Yeah. So Having said that, this cost effectiveness analysis is basically the most practiced one, most practiced economic evaluation technique. In healthcare. And most suitable, yeah, it's most suitable as well, I don't have to mention. What we primarily do in cost effectiveness analysis, that we bring and compare, we compare cost and effectiveness, compare both cost and effectiveness in a same common platform. In a same common platform, yeah. The second thing, how we compare the cost and effectiveness, we measure it in terms of that incremental ratios. Yeah, so this is also known as incremental cost effectiveness ratio, and which sets my decision rule that, based on this incremental cost effectiveness ratio, I will take my decision that whether I will adapt a particular technique or I won't, or whether a particular cost effectiveness study says that this particular process is good enough, and this particular process, if I move from one process to another process, process A to process B, maybe the improvement is not really high, really convincing. So we do a incremental cost effectiveness ratio, and then we try to understand the what is beyond the ICER, or I will say values beyond ICER and its implications or interpretations. Yes. So when we do a cost effectiveness analysis, we basically follow a framework. The first one is state objectives and perspective, that is the constraints, the scenario, like the situation analysis. You set your objective doing a situation analysis, otherwise maybe you are setting your objectives wrong, and maybe your research question is also wrong, your hypothesis doesn't really match with your current scenario or the future scenario, what you are certainly going to meet. So while we are talking about the frameworks, of cost effectiveness analysis, the first thing is state objectives and perspective, right? The second one is identify the alternatives, right? That's what we are going to do based on a particular objective, because otherwise I may have thousands of alternatives, but I have to find these alternatives which will be coming from the objectives. My objective, and they all are related, healthcare is very, very related. So my objective is maybe my improvement of my mobility, but then that improvement of mobility can be treated by a orthopedic surgeon, can be treated by a neurologist, can be treated by a physiotherapist. So there are several, and within a particular stream, within neurology, within orthopedic, so there are several processes, right? So all these are my alternatives. But looking at the objective, that whether it's a neurological problem or whether it's an orthopedic problem, my broad objective may be the movement. But then we do the perspective analysis, that we need to understand that which are the logical alternatives, because we won't probably studying all the alternatives and then making life cumbersome. We won't be doing that. So identify the alternatives, and then the third is identify and measure the costs and benefits. Right, and these costs and benefits are all these sensible alternatives which we will be studying finally. The fourth one is, after measuring the costs and benefits, we will be doing a sensitivity analysis. What is sensitivity analysis? Sensitivity analysis gives you a kind of confirmation about a relationship between the dependent variables as well as the independent variables. There can be a set of dependent variables and a set of independent variables, and one particular model with one dependent variable and a set of independent variable for a given population, the result can be very, very different from the result of the same model worked on a different population. And if we do a meta-analysis or a systematic review on a particular subject, we see that these kinds of cost effectiveness analysis or economic impact evaluation studies or health technology assessment studies, I just write you the name, health technology assessment studies, it's a similar thing. Yeah, and all these studies have found very varying examples, outcomes. Yeah, and then it's very difficult to come to a common understanding or come to an understanding that which is an average effectiveness or which is an expected one. So, and that is where we collect the data through these meta-analysis. So, either randomized controlled trials or meta-analysis. This is a systematic review. This is a statistical process of systematic review, highly practiced in medicine sciences, because the effectiveness are so widely varying. So, and then just looking at a literature, it is difficult to take a decision that, oh my god, this literature says that, so I expect this. No, it doesn't really happen like that as far as these clinical studies, medical studies are concerned. Okay, so I will just wipe this off, or probably I could keep it anyways. So, then the next is to continue with the flow, that after we do a sensitivity analysis, we come to a consensus, we have an idea about kind of confirmed or kind of convincing outcome or the relationship pattern. And then the last one is discuss the assumptions and results and interpret. Right, discuss the assumptions and results and finally interpret. That you have drawn several assumptions, right? You have probably not taken all the variables. You have not probably considered the difference of effectiveness in that way, which used to be or which is generally like that. And now to simplify your problem, because operations research problem is a kind of an operation research problem. In an operation research problem, we try to simplify a problem. General problem, a story boiled down to a simple mathematical formula. So, this is in terms of the framework of cost effectiveness analysis. Now, this, as I said, that the cost effectiveness analysis we measure in terms of incremental cost effectiveness ratio, right? Incremental cost effectiveness ratio, again, as the name suggests, incremental means that marginal changes, right? That if 1 unit of something changes, how much the dependent factor change, right? So, over here incremental cost effectiveness ratio, again cost and then effectiveness. So, it is like we can call it as ICER. It is delta C by delta E. So, delta C is change in cost or percentage change in cost, whatever, change in effectiveness. So, to bring 1 unit change in effectiveness, how much cost I am incurring? To bring 1 unit change in effectiveness, how much cost I am incurring? And based on this ratio, I will set my decision rules, that whether I consider a particular improvement or change in to get 1 unit more effectiveness, if my cost increases say by 5 rupees, I say, oh, it's not that, maybe it's not that much, so I can continue. It probably says that if I can bring this effectiveness, it has a at a long run it has a high, longer benefit or larger benefit. So maybe, and for that 5 rupees I won't let go that benefit. At the same time, if again 1 unit effectiveness increment will charge me this for the same 1 unit but a different process, costs me 15 rupees more, then I will say no, I am not going to get that. So this incremental cost effectiveness ratio gives me, based on that I will set my decision rules, and my decision rule may vary from others, yeah, and that depends upon the budgets and everything, managerial aspects. But at the same time, and these ratios for a particular treatment process or a particular objective will be very different from another objective, right? So it varies from objective to objective, from the research setting to research setting. So we cannot really standardize the decision rules for a particular process. And these all processes are independent programs, and we really don't take decisions based on the averages, or average cost effectiveness. Right, this is simple C by B. So, and we don't take decisions based on that. Based on C by B, E, average cost effectiveness ratio. Yeah. So therefore, say if I have an example like A, B, C and D, and then I have cost of a screening test, yeah, anything screening test, and my effectiveness. Cost and effect basically, yeah, and then my cost, if say this is 100, this is 20, this is 200, this is 35, this is 500, this is maybe 76, this is 800, this is something close to 157, and then I can measure a C by E, right, which is 100 by 20, 200 by 35 and so on. But we won't measure based on this, we will estimate a cost effectiveness. So the first one will be blank, the second one of course is kind of cost, so change in cost is 100 rupees by the changing effectiveness is 15. So this is my cost effectiveness ratio, and for each I will have a cost effectiveness ratio that say from this minus this and then this minus this, and that is how I met my cost effectiveness ratio, and based on these values, cost effectiveness ratio or marginal, that is the marginal impact, I will take the decisions, but not on this. Yeah, so remember that. So and if, and these are I see here based on which we take the decision rules. And if we want to plot this decision rules technique on a 4 quadrant diagram, then it should be like over here my new treatment is effective, more effective, new treatment less effective, new treatment less costly, new treatment more costly. So if I am on this quadrant, any point on this quadrant, there will be new treatment is more costly and more effective. So it's a win-win scenario, right? Here, So it's sorry, it's a win-loss scenario, because here your treatment is becoming more effective, but the cost is increasing, right? So you don't really take a decision. Yes, or it's not easy to take a decision. Over here, new treatment dominates. Because if this is the starting point, or this is the the current technique, current process, so and I am comparing this 0 0, that is the origin, from 0 0, I am trying to estimate that which one. So over here, if I move, I get any point, and these all points over here gives me this incremental cost effectiveness ratio. They will give me an ICER. And then if I can estimate them, then over here on this quadrant we can see that my new treatment is more effective, but the cost is also coming down. Yeah, so the treatment is more effective, cost is coming down. So it's a win-win scenario, and you will certainly close your eyes and will go for this new treatment. So the new treatment dominates. Whereas over here, again the catch is the new treatment is less costly. So a positive over here, but the most important thing is that it is less effective. Yeah, so I understand that it is less effective, but shall I go for the lower the cost, that given the condition that it is less effective. So I need to decide on that. Over here, old treatment dominates. Because for the new treatment, not only my new treatment is less effective, but the cost is also high. Why should I take that? I will stay here, right? So on any of these points over here, on any of these points, I will never take this decision. That's primarily because it's not only more costly, but my effectiveness is also going down. So I will stick to my old process or old decision. Therefore, what we do, we draw a line. Through this point, yes, and this gives my maximum ICER, incremental cost effectiveness ratio. Yes, anything more than that, anything beyond this, I won't choose, right? I will stick to the old treatment. So any value more than this, that will show me that say the point here, it will give me the new treatment is more effective, I mean more costly, but less effective as compared to this, or as compared to this, or this is, even if the effectiveness is similar, if I compare this point and this point, the effectiveness is similar, but the cost is more, right? So any point beyond this line, I will not choose. Similarly, over here, say a point over here, what is happening? So the new treatment is less effective, even if the cost is low. So shall I go to that extent that I understand that the cost is low, but I go for a lesser effectiveness? That I understand that homeopathy is lesser effective, but I will go with that because the cost is low, because I can't afford. But how far? I may take that decision, that can be a part of my rational decision making, but how far? Because after a certain while, nobody wants to compromise on their health, or if there is everything, ceteris paribus, everything given, that the quality is there, the affordability, the accessibility is there, still people may choose that, okay, even if it's a less effectiveness, but I will go for less costly because it really doesn't, it's not a very serious concern for me. Or I'll just sit back at home, and then who will take this antibiotic and all this, yeah. So again, over here the catch is, the cost may be lower, but at the same time you are compromising on the quality. But with the lowering cost, you will not lower your effectiveness by a large margin. So you will remain somewhere here, right? So you will, your decision rules will be taken by any points which will be on this right hand side, on the right hand side, and these decisions will be given by ICER, which is delta cost by delta effectiveness, and should be less than lambda or less than equals to lambda, or this line. Yeah, either you take that or not. So, less than equals to lambda. So, lambda is that ICR value, maximum ICR value. This is the lambda, this value. Yes. So, we will stop here, and then next class we will discuss about cost utility analysis, the daily, quali and cost benefit analysis. Thank you very much.